Oh, hi! If you were wondering why I'm currently playing what appears to be Sonic the Hedgehog on top of my 3D printer, well, first and foremost, I don't like being sued to oblivion by Nintendo, and for everything else, you have to stick around.
Pointer mantis activated. Let me talk you through this contraption. Down here, and yes, it cannot stay on the print bed forever, this is just for testing purposes, is an old modem from my internet service provider, which I SSH'd into it. I deactivated all the Wi-Fi and all the modem functionality, and it's currently just acting as a router, which is connected to the printer and to the computer which I strapped on top of it. This is the RCA Cambio, the most anemic and slowest piece of manufactured e-waste I've ever encountered in my life. So you might wonder, why did I use it for this project? First and foremost, it has actually a touchscreen, which miraculously now doesn't work anymore under certain circumstances, but we get to that later. Also, it came with a standard BIOS and Windows installed on it. Therefore, I was able to install another OS on it. On the side here, professionally strapped with masking tape, is a micro USB to Ethernet cable. Who knew that exists? That little black thing up here is a barrel jack to USB adapter. And up here, for weird sound reasons, mini HDMI to HDMI cable, which is fed back here into that box. Taped down here, an HDMI audio extractor, which then goes into this USB powered auxiliary cable connected active speaker with RGB. And you're right to say this is a stupid setup. That's why it's only screwed down with an old piece of wood that I found in the garage and two screws in the back there and a metal angle that I also found in the garage.
You might be wondering why I would do such silly things. Unless, of course, you watched some of my other videos on the channel, then this kind of insanity doesn't come as a surprise. There's a reason behind this madness. If I ever want to print reliably ABS, ASA, or any other filament of that ilk, then I have to move this printer out of this room, regardless of the enclosure I build or what kind of filtration system I'm gonna add. Besides the fumes, it is not really pleasant for my guests in the room next door when this printer is running 20 or 30 hours non-stop on large prints. Not to mention my wife, who has to use this space on her work from home days. So that got me thinking of a more workshop-esque kind of environment. And that reminded me of a, at that time, top-of-the-line 3-axis CNC mill that I operated roughly 26 years ago. This particular machine had a little screen interface where you could simulate tool paths, tool changes, and you could even model simple isometric objects if you needed to do a quick one-of-a-kind piece that didn't require an entire set of CAD drawings and a full-fledged data set for CNC machines. Of course, this kind of setup I can definitely not replicate with the RCA Cambio up here as the brains of the operation. Let me tell you the eye-watering specs of this hunk of junk. 32 gigabytes of storage, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and a blistering fast 1.44 gigahertz Intel Atom processor. But since it was on hand, I might as well use it for testing instead of it sitting somewhere gathering dust. As I mentioned earlier, I installed a new operating system on this device. As you've probably seen, I chose the least likely of contenders, Batocera Linux. Correct, a retro gaming focused distro. That of course explains the Sonic gaming from earlier. But why did I choose Batocera? In and on itself, it is pretty lightweight and can pretty much be installed on anything that is bootable from a USB stick. But it has another little trick up its sleeve, and that's the following. You go to Ports, Enter, you can actually install Firefox. and it's blazing fast. And there it is. So what I created is essentially a self-contained touchscreen operated 3D printer. No Wi-Fi needed, no internet needed, and you operate it via Mainsail. And I hope you can see that now when I try to use the touchscreen. I promise, when I tested this first, it actually worked. But after I hooked up all the other wires, something got messed up. But you can see I touch here and it chooses this one over there. Or I touch down here. Nope. Nope. Oh yeah, code viewer. Nope. Oh, there it goes. Yeah. So this particular model is not really usable. But if you could find a device that is not as shitty as this one, you could create something like that for your workshop. And that would be way easier than having to run back and forth from your main computer, or then you see, oh, something is not right with the model, you need to adjust something quickly. If you have a more powerful machine connected to your printer, you could do these kind of little tweaks on the fly in your workshop, and you don't have to have your 3D drafting rig sitting in your dirty garage or wherever. I was actually going to show you what might happen if you put a device with the internal battery to the USB port of the SV08. However, the RCA Cambio actually kicked the bucket during filming of this video. So I have to explain it to you. If you use a device with the internal battery, a tablet or a laptop or anything else, and you hook it up to the USB port of the Sovol SV08, and you then turn off your printer, it is possible that the battery from the hooked up device feeds power backwards into your main control unit. That means your printer is actually powered off and you get immediately a code number 8 error. And I'm also not certain that it is very advisable to feed power through a port that was not exactly intended to do that. That depends on how the USB or how the charging port on your device is laid out and what kind of cord you use, because some of them can feed power both ways and some of them don't. Just be aware of that you don't mess up your printer. Besides that, where will I go now from here? Obviously, I cannot use the RCA Cambio to control this printer forever. Also, I'm not always a big fan of touchscreens. Touchscreens don't necessarily make everything better. They make some things more convenient, and other things, they don't do much for me. Therefore, I ordered a second-hand workstation from Dell, an Optiplex of an older generation, which I will beef up a little bit, obtain a second-hand monitor, keyboard and mouse. Then I'm gonna see that I can install Orca Slicer as well as a lightweight 3D modeling program on that machine. And then I will have a self-contained 3D printer with an operating system on board. The end goal is then to put all of that in a nice box, so the printer is enclosed, the computer is protected from dust, maybe put it on some wheels, improve the printer on the way there, and see where that leads us. Thank you for watching. See you next time.